Since US and Canada are main players in the western part of the world, US we will deal a little later. But what about Canada situation? How are we dealing with it? Now, have we contained
Yeah, just
it?
imagine, some time ago you would have said, Canada we will deal with later, let's talk about the US. So now, for some inexplicable reason, you are saying US baad mein baat karenge, chalo Canada ki baat karte.
US is not problematic for us.
No, that's true, I agree. I agree.
Yeah.
US is not problematic for us.
But Canada is, even though it's a lightweight.
Unfortunately, I agree there also.
But such a wonderful people-to-people relationship, and now it is a struggling economy and whatever. But why Trudeau will be doing this?
I think that's a question you need to have Trudeau here, not Jaishankar, to answer. I can only speculate. Look, to some extent, I think there is a general Western issue, and to some extent, a very specific Canada issue. I think the Western issue has been, after all, let's be frank, the world order after 1945 was heavily Western. I mean, it was before 45 also in an imperial colonial sense. And after 1990s, it was again very, very Western. So what has happened, you can say, in the last 20, 25 years is that there is what you can call a rebalancing, a multipolarity. Many non-Western countries have a bigger share, a bigger contribution, a bigger role, if you would, and a bigger influence which will naturally come. So the equations, in a way, between the West and the non-West, I think is changing. And it's not easy to adjust to that. If you've been dominant and you are less dominant, if there was a time when, in the conversation, you were looking up and I was looking down, and now the conversation is no longer like that. It takes a little bit of getting used to. So I would say, in a broad way, on multiple subjects, today, when the natural diversity of the world has started to express itself, when many more countries, and particularly many more large countries like India or China, have points of view and positions to take, there will be contestations, there will be frictions, there will be arguments. So it won't be so smooth. That's a larger picture. Where Canada is concerned, I think there are some very specific issues. I think a lot of people know that. You are right. If you look at the people to people, if you look at the business relationship, it's very, very strong. And for a lot of people, it is very difficult to imagine that we could reach the state of relations that we have today. So why has this happened? I would say definitely there is some history, for the non-Indians in the room, I should remind you that in the 1980s, Indian Air India plane was blown up flying out of Canada, and in many ways that's a kind of a overhang, because it wasn't just an incident, it was a reflection of something which is going on there. But at a time when many people felt that, look, that's all behind us, I think developments in the politics went in a different direction. And we are seeing to some degree the consequences of that. So again, I give you the first observation that, the broad attitude versus the specific. And I'll give you 2-3 examples of it. Canada has just they asked us to subject our High Commissioner to a police inquiry, you can say, and we chose to withdraw the High Commissioner and diplomats. Now, look at it. They seem to have a problem if Indian diplomats are even trying to make efforts to find out what is happening in Canada on matters which directly pertain to their welfare and security. But look what happens in India. Canadian diplomats have no problem going around collecting information on our military, on our police, profiling people, targeting people to be stopped in Canada. So apparently the license that they give themselves is totally different from the kind of restrictions that they impose on diplomats in Canada. Or even take the press. I'm at a press event. Now, when we tell them, saying, look, you have people openly threatening leaders of India, diplomats of India. Sometimes the threat is not just verbal, it's physical. So their answer is freedom of speech. Okay? Now, when Indian journalists make social media comments, if you threaten the Indian High Commissioner, he is supposed to accept it as freedom of speech. But if an Indian journalist says the Canadian High Commissioner walked out of South Block looking very grumpy, it is apparently foreign interference. Now, how, look at the, this is not even, double standards, a very mild word for it. So, look, there is this thing that we will do it differently at home, we will do it differently abroad, we will do it our way, but that doesn't apply to you. So I think these are the larger, I would say, adjustments which have to happen in this changing world.
राइट अब चलते हैं चाइना की तरफ, जहां आज एक बड़ा डेवलपमेंट हुआ है. फॉरेन सेक्रेटरी ने ब्रिक्स मीटिंग के ठीक पहले ही हैज अनाउंस्ड दैट सम एग्रीमेंट हैज बीन रीच्ड फॉर disengagement and patrolling. So I'll be very keen to know some details how it will work.
Well, I think what Foreign Secretary has said is what I can also say, that for those who have not heard that we reached an agreement on patrolling, and with that the disengagement, we have gone back to where the situation was in 2020, and we can say with that the disengagement process with China, you can say, has been completed. So, so far, I would say that's as much as I can share with you. I'm sure in due course, iske details वगैरह निकलेंगे.
So, will now India be able to patrol in the areas of Galwan, Dipsang?
No, you see, there are areas which for various reasons after 2020, because they had blocked us, so we had blocked them. So दो तरफा था, Bob. So what has happened is we have reached an understanding which will allow the patrolling. For example, you spoke about Depsang. That's not the only place. There are other places also. So I think the understanding, to my knowledge, is that we will be able to do the patrolling which we were doing in 2020.
Right. So what does this disengagement will finally mean, and how do we now see India-China relation going forward?
I think it's a good development. It's a positive development, and I would say it's a product of a very patient and very persevering diplomacy. That at various points of time, people almost gave up. You can say, this has happened. So we have always maintained that, on the one hand, we had to obviously do the counter deployments, but side by side, we have been negotiating. We've been negotiating in fact, since September of 2020. when I met my counterpart, Mr. Wangi, in Moscow at that time. So it has been a very patient process, maybe more complicated than it could and should have been. But whatever it is, the fact is, if we are able, as we now have, to reach an understanding regarding the regarding patrolling, regarding maintaining the observing the sanctity of the LAC, then I think what it does is it creates a basis that the peace and tranquility, which there should be in the border areas, which there was before 2020, hopefully we will be able to come back to that peace and tranquility. And that was our major concern, because we always said that if you disturb the peace and tranquility, how do you expect the rest of the relationship to go forward? So we'll have to see. I mean, ye abhi jo understanding jo thi, it was reached only today.
We have family and friends living in Canada. So how all this is going to impact our families and friends living in Canada? Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Let me start with that question. Look, I'm not aware of today exactly the specificities, but the broad point is, we have seen, this would not be the first time. We have seen threats to our airlines. We have seen threats to our parliament. We have seen threats to our diplomats. We have seen threats to our High Commission, to our leaders. And that is a source of concern to us, because if these threats, because they are cleverly worded, are then said, they are okay with freedom of speech, I think there are very serious issues. And the point which we make to the country concerned, let us reverse roles. Suppose you were at the receiving end of this threat. Suppose it was your airline, your leaders, your diplomats, your parliament. Would you take it as lightly as that? So, no, you don't get a second chance. I get to answer. So, look, my point is, these are exactly the kind of problems with which we started this conversation. That there are countries which feel that, your concerns don't matter, that's okay, that's part of our politics. But if the slightest thing happens to them, even if it is legitimate, they have they start jumping up and down. So, as I said, when I see today you're talking of something as egregious as a threat to the airline, I'm talking of something as simple as social. I mean, if a government can list out, 20, 25 Indian journalists saying these journalists are today interfering in my country because they have made social media posts. And this is the same government which then tells you, a threat to airlines is part of freedom of speech. I think you ask yourself, whose credibility is taking a hit out here.
मेरा एक सवाल आपसे ये है कि जो प्राइम मिनिस्टर मोदी का डिप्लोमेटिक स्किल, जो डेफ्टनेस हमने देखा है, अब ग्लोबली बहुत सारे पॉलिसी एलिट्स ये कहने लग गए हैं कि एक्चुअली मोदी लेड इंडिया के लिए एक बड़ी अपॉर्चुनिटी है नए ग्लोबल ऑर्डर को शेप करने की। उस रोल को आप लोग कितना अंडरस्टेटेड ढंग से प्ले कर रहे हैं या कितना फ्रंट फुट पर खेलने वाले हैं?
देखिए, हम दोनों कर रहे हैं क्योंकि कभी कभी समय, अवसर, मौका ऐसा होता है, यू हैव टू बी फ्रंट फुट। जैसे हमें लगा कि ग्लोबल साउथ की आवाज़ जो है बिल्कुल दब गई। सो लीडिंग इनटू G20, हमें लगा वी हैव टू गेट द ग्लोबल साउथ टुगेदर, वी हैव टू गेट बैक टू देयर कंसर्न्स which had got sidelined. That's occasion where you are, as you say, on front foot. But there are occasions where you have to be more deft. अब जैसे अब प्रधानमंत्री जी, he went to Russia, he met President Putin, then he went to Kiev. Okay. So now certain things, अब इसको आप पब्लिक में ब्रॉडकास्ट, मैं तो आपको तो नहीं बताऊंगा what is happening. So some things you have to do from little bit more discreetly, deftly. But I would say this, just look over the last 10 years. Right now, there is a war going on in Ukraine. how many countries, how many prime ministers, how many leaders have the ability to go to Moscow, talk frankly, go to Kiev, talk frankly, go back to Moscow and go back to Kiev? Similarly, there's another war going on in the Middle East. Now, not many people know that even in the last year, the number of times where actually we've had conversations with Iran and conversations with Israel, that's also there.
True.
We are today in the global south seen very much, okay, people trust us to stand for their interests. But please also see at the same time, G7 is very keen ki bhai aap aiye, please join our conference. You are a big democratic market economy and influential player. So how to in a sense make yourself relevant across multiple forums and multiple interests? I think this is something which, as I said, if you have a confident leadership and if you are performing, look, at the end of the day, why are they all doing it? Because they're also looking at your performance. When you tell people, look, I'm a 7-8% growth economy today. And if you tell politically people that I am a third-term government, believe me, there's a lot of respect for that. So it's partly respect is earned.
Right. जी. जब मैंने पहली बार आपका इंटरव्यू किया था तो मैंने कहा हमारी पूरी बातचीत हो गई, पाकिस्तान का नाम ही नहीं लिया.
चलिए, अच्छा था ना?
नहीं, लेकिन अब मैं इसलिए ले रहा हूं क्योंकि आप जाके आए हैं और स्पेकुलेशन अगेन हमारा काम है करना कि नवाज शरीफ फिर बुलाएंगे प्राइम मिनिस्टर को.
सॉरी, स्पेकुलेशन क्या?
नवाज शरीफ फिर बुलाएंगे प्राइम मिनिस्टर को.
मैं उनसे तो नहीं मिला था और मैं गया था वहाँ SCO की मीटिंग के लिए, और जैसे मैंने पहले से बहुत स्पष्ट रूप से कहा था, आई एम गोइंग देयर फॉर अ SCO मीटिंग, आई एम अ गुड SCO मेंबर, I will be very supportive, and it was a Pakistani presidency of SCO, we were very supportive of it. All of us had an interest कि SCO की proceedings जो है बहुत smoothly चले. तो गए वहाँ, मिले सबसे, हाथ मिलाया, had a good meeting और आ गए वापस.
चलिए ठीक है.